Apple. The apple is probably the most recognized fruit on the planet, and yet most people have no idea where it actually came from. The wild ancestor of the modern apple still grows today in the forests of Central Asia, near the Tian Shan Mountains of Kazakhstan. Those wild apples were small, bitter, and nothing like what you'd find in a grocery store. The Romans spread the fruit across Europe through trade and conquest, and for thousands of years after that, farmers slowly selected and replanted the best tasting trees they could find, generation after generation, until the diversity we have today emerged. There are now over 7,000 named varieties of apple in the world. Most of them you will never see in a supermarket because they bruise too easily, don't ship well, or simply don't look appealing enough on a shelf. The industry has narrowed down to a handful of varieties that travel well and look uniform. Everything else survives in heritage orchards and farmers markets, if it survives at all. Mango. Mangoes have been cultivated for over 4,000 years and are deeply embedded in the culture of South Asia in a way that almost no other fruit is. India, Pakistan, and the Philippines all claim the mango as their national fruit. Buddhist monks considered mango groves ideal places for meditation, and the Mughal Emperor Akbar is said to have planted an orchard of 100,000 mango trees. Portuguese traders were responsible for spreading mangoes to Africa, Brazil, and eventually the rest of the tropical world. More varieties of mango exist in India alone than in all other countries combined. The flavor range is extraordinary. Some varieties taste floral and honeyed. Others have a resinous, almost turpentine quality that people either love or find completely weird. The Alfonso, grown on the Konkan coast, is considered by many the finest eating mango in existence, and the price really reflects the reputation it got for being a king of mangoes. Banana. The banana you buy at the grocery store is not the banana your grandparents grew up eating. The original commercial banana was the Gros Michel, a thicker, creamier, more intensely flavored variety that was wiped out almost entirely by a fungal disease called Panama disease in the mid-20th century. The industry switched to the Cavendish, the banana we know today, because it was resistant to that particular strain of the fungus. The Cavendish cannot reproduce from seeds. Every single plant is grown from offshoots of existing plants, which means every Cavendish banana in the world is genetically identical to every other one, and that's a serious problem. A new strain of the same disease called Tropical Race 4 is already spreading globally, and the Cavendish has no natural resistance to it. Early wild bananas had hard seeds the size of pebbles running through the middle. The seedless soft flesh we eat now is the product of thousands of years of selective cultivation. And technically, by botanical definition, the banana is a berry. Pineapple. Pineapples come from South America, originally from what is now southern Brazil and Paraguay, and for centuries after Europeans encountered them, they were one of the most status-loaded objects in the world. In 17th and 18th century England, a single pineapple could cost the equivalent of $8,000 in today's money. They were so expensive and rare that people would rent pineapples for an evening just to carry one to a party as an accessory. Hosts who could afford to leave one sitting out until it rotted were making a specific statement about their wealth. The pineapple became a symbol of hospitality and prosperity that you still see carved into gateposts and doorways across New England. Pineapples contain an enzyme called bromelain that actively breaks down protein, which is why your tongue feels slightly raw after eating a lot of fresh pineapple. It is also why you cannot use fresh pineapple in gelatin, because it will prevent the gelatin from setting entirely. Watermelon. Watermelon is native to Africa and has been cultivated for over 5,000 years. Ancient Egyptian tomb paintings document the fruit being grown and eaten as far back as the 2nd millennium BCE. The wild ancestors of the watermelon were small, round, and extremely bitter. They were valued not for their flavor, but for their water content, because in arid environments, a watermelon was essentially a portable canteen. The sweet red flesh we know today was developed over centuries of selective breeding. The red color comes from lycopene, the same antioxidant found in tomatoes. About 92% of the fruit is water, which is exactly how it got its name. Modern seedless watermelons are not a natural development. They are produced by crossing diploid and tetraploid plants to create triploid offspring that are essentially sterile and cannot produce viable seeds. Pomegranate. The pomegranate is one of the oldest cultivated fruits on Earth, with evidence of farming going back 5,000 years in what is now Iran and Afghanistan. It appears in ancient Persian mythology, in the Greek story of Persephone, and in the religious texts of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In Jewish tradition, the pomegranate's seeds are believed to number exactly 613, the same as the number of commandments in the Torah. In medieval Christian art, it was a symbol of the resurrection, and in Buddhism, it is one of the 3 blessed fruits. The pomegranate managed to hold symbolic weight across cultures that had no contact with each other, which says something about how long and how widely it has been part of human life. Figure. The fig might be the oldest cultivated plant in human history, possibly predating wheat and barley by thousands of years. Archaeologists found evidence of fig cultivation in the Jordan Valley dating back 11,400 years. What most people don't know is that a fig is not technically a fruit in the conventional sense. It is an inverted flower structure called a syconium, and the crunchy bits inside are the actual flowers. Pollination in wild figs involves a tiny wasp that crawls inside through a small opening at the base, pollinates the flowers, lays its eggs, and usually dies inside. The fig produces an enzyme that breaks down the wasp entirely. You are not eating wasp parts. Most commercial figs are self-pollinating varieties that don't require wasps at all. Durian. The durian is famous in Southeast Asia in a way that is almost impossible to explain to someone who has never encountered one. It is large, heavy, and covered in sharp spines. It is banned on public transportation and in hotels across Singapore and several other countries because the smell is so intense and so persistent. The odor has been described as everything from rotting onions to gym socks to natural gas. But the flesh inside, for people who can get past the smell, tastes extraordinary. Rich, custardy, and deeply sweet with a complexity that doesn't exist in many other fruits. Certain varieties, particularly the Musang King from Malaysia, are considered luxury products and sell for very high prices. Lemon. Lemons are a hybrid fruit, most likely a cross between a citron and a bitter orange, and they probably originated somewhere in northeastern India. In 1747, a Scottish naval surgeon named James Lind conducted what is considered one of the first proper controlled clinical trials in medical history, proving that lemons and oranges could cure scurvy. At the time, scurvy was killing more sailors on long voyages than enemy ships were. The discovery eventually led to British sailors being given citrus rations, which is where the nickname limey came from. Lemons have also historically been used as invisible ink. The acid in lemon juice becomes visible when exposed to heat, which made it useful for secret correspondence as far back as ancient Rome. Lemon trees are unusual among fruit plants because they can produce fruit year-round and never go fully dormant. Dates. Date palms have been cultivated in the Middle East and North Africa for approximately 7,000 years, making dates one of the oldest cultivated fruits in recorded history. The date palm was so central to ancient Mesopotamian civilization that it appeared on coins, in religious texts, and as a symbol of prosperity and victory. Dates are exceptionally high in sugar, sometimes exceeding 80% sugar content when dried, making them among the most calorie-dense fruits that exist. A single date palm can produce hundreds of pounds of fruit per year and live for over a century. In 2005, scientists germinated a date palm seed that was approximately 2,000 years old, recovered from excavations at Masada in Israel. The tree grew successfully. The Medjool variety, known for its large size and caramel-like sweetness, is the one most commonly found in Western grocery stores, though hundreds of other varieties exist across the world. Dragon fruit. Dragon fruit grows on a cactus. That is the first thing to understand about it. It is native to Central America and was brought to Southeast Asia by French colonizers in the early 19th century, where it adapted so well that Vietnam now produces the vast majority of the world's supply, even though the fruit has no native roots there whatsoever. The flavor is mild and refreshing with a light sweetness that some people find underwhelming compared to the dramatic appearance. The flesh can be white or deep magenta, and the tiny black seeds are edible. Dragon fruit became globally popular in large part because of how photogenic it is. It photographs beautifully in smoothie bowls, and that aesthetic drove a significant portion of its rise in Western markets. Jackfruit. The jackfruit is the largest tree fruit in the world. Individual fruits regularly weigh between 50 and 80 pounds. It is the national fruit of both Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and grows directly from the trunk and main branches of the tree rather than from small stems, which gives mature trees a bizarre, almost prehistoric appearance. Unripe jackfruit has a fibrous, neutral texture that absorbs flavors extremely well, which is why it became popular as a meat substitute in vegetarian cooking. When pulled apart and cooked in sauce, the texture is genuinely similar to pulled pork. When fully ripe, the flavor shifts completely, becoming tropical and sweet, somewhere between pineapple and banana. The latex in the skin and core is intensely sticky and will bond to bare hands and ruin clothing. Vendors preparing jackfruit always coat their hands and blades in oil first. A single tree can produce up to 200 fruits per year. Starfruit, also called carambola, is native to tropical Asia and gets its name from the five-pointed star shape it forms when sliced crosswise. The entire fruit is edible, skin included, and the flavor ranges from quite sour to mildly sweet depending on the variety and ripeness. What most people don't know about starfruit is that it contains a neurotoxin that healthy kidneys filter out without any problem. But for people with compromised kidney function, starfruit can be genuinely dangerous. It has caused serious neurological episodes and has been linked to deaths in patients with kidney disease. It is also high in oxalates, which means people prone to kidney stones are generally advised to avoid it. In healthy people with functioning kidneys, starfruit is perfectly safe, with a crisp, watery texture similar to a grape. Mangosteen. Mangosteen is often called the queen of fruits. The thick purple rind conceals white segments inside that are juicy, sweet, and faintly citrusy, with a fragrance that is difficult to describe but immediately recognizable. One legend holds that Queen Victoria offered a reward of 100 pounds sterling to anyone who could deliver her a fresh mangosteen, which is how it acquired its royal nickname. Whether or not that story is true, the fruit was largely unknown outside Southeast Asia for centuries, because the trees grow slowly and the fruit has a limited shelf life. Mangosteen trees reproduce through a process called apomixis, meaning seeds develop without pollination, and the offspring are genetically identical to the parent tree. It has delicate sweet and tangy flavor, often described as a mix of lychee, peach, strawberry, and pineapple with a creamy texture. Guava. Guava is native to Mexico and Central America and was spread throughout the tropical world by Spanish and Portuguese colonizers during the 16th and 17th centuries. The entire fruit is edible, including the rind, and the flesh can be white, yellow, pink, or a deep red, depending on the variety. Guava contains more vitamin C than an orange, more lycopene than a tomato, and more potassium than a banana. In Brazil, guava paste called goiabada is eaten with fresh cheese in a combination called Romeo and Juliet, one of the most well-liked traditional desserts in the country. The smell of a ripe guava in a room is remarkable. Intensely tropical, floral, and slightly musky in a way that carries right through. Peach. In Chinese culture, the peach is the definitive symbol of immortality. It appears throughout Chinese mythology, and the idea that eating a peach could grant eternal life runs deep through Taoist tradition. The fruit originated in China and traveled west along the Silk Road, reaching Persia and then Europe over thousands of years. The fuzz on a peach's skin helps regulate moisture and provides some protection from insects. There's a fruit similar to peaches called nectarines, but majority people mistake it as a separate species. They are simply peaches with a single genetic mutation that removes the fuzz. White peaches contain the same amount of sugar as yellow peaches, but taste sweeter because they have lower acidity. A perfectly ripe peach has one of the shortest shelf lives of any common fruit, which is why supermarket peaches are almost always picked underripe. China produces more peaches than any other country in the world by a significant margin. Miracle berry. The miracle berry is a small red fruit from West Africa that does something no other fruit does. It contains a protein called miraculin that binds to the taste receptors on your tongue and causes sour and acidic foods to taste intensely sweet for anywhere between 30 minutes and 2 hours. Biting into a lemon after a miracle berry tastes like lemonade. Vinegar tastes like apple juice. Hot sauce tastes like a sweet glaze. In the 1970s, an entrepreneur tried to commercialize miracle berry tablets as a sugar substitute for diabetics. The FDA blocked approval, and under circumstances that many researchers and journalists found suspicious, the decision is widely believed to have involved pressure from the sugar industry. Today, miracle berries are mostly used at flavor tripping parties where people gather specifically to eat strange foods and experience the magic. Breadfruit. Breadfruit is one of the most productive food plants on Earth. A single mature tree can produce hundreds of fruits per year for decades. The starchy flesh, when baked or roasted, has a texture genuinely similar to fresh bread or a baked potato, which is how it got its name. It is native to the Pacific Islands and has been a dietary staple across Polynesia for thousands of years. In the 18th century, the British government funded an expedition aboard the Bounty, commanded by Captain William Bligh, specifically to transport breadfruit plants from Tahiti to the Caribbean, where they intended to use it as cheap, high-calorie food for enslaved people on plantations. The mutiny interrupted that plan, but Bligh eventually completed a second voyage and succeeded. Pawpaw. The pawpaw is the largest fruit native to North America, and it is almost completely unknown to most Americans. It tastes like a cross between a banana and a mango, with a soft custardy texture and a flavor that seems entirely too tropical to be growing wild in Ohio and Kentucky. Indigenous peoples across eastern North America ate pawpaws widely, and early American explorers, including Lewis and Clark, relied on them for food during stretches of their journey. Thomas Jefferson grew pawpaw trees at Monticello. George Washington reportedly enjoyed them cold for dessert. And yet the fruit virtually disappeared from American food culture because it ripens for only a few weeks in late summer, bruises almost immediately after picking, and has a shelf life measured in days rather than weeks. You cannot ship a pawpaw commercially under normal conditions. The only way to eat one is to be close to where it grows when it ripens. Jaboticaba. The jaboticaba, also called the Brazilian grape tree, behaves unlike any other fruit tree in the world. Instead of producing fruit at the end of slender stems, it grows its fruit directly out of the trunk and main branches. When the tree is in full fruit, it looks like the bark has been covered in dark, round grapes. The flavor is similar to a muscadine grape, sweet with a thick skin that pops when you bite it. The fruit spoils within 3 to 4 days of ripening, which makes export essentially impossible. Outside Brazil, the jaboticaba is almost completely unknown. Brazilians make wine, liqueur, jam, jelly, and even ice cream from it. Some trees take between 8 and 15 years to produce fruit for the first time, which is one reason it is mostly found in home gardens rather than commercial farms. Finger lime. The finger lime is native to the rainforests of eastern Australia and is often called citrus caviar because of what happens when you cut one open. Instead of conventional segments or juice, you find hundreds of tiny spheres that look almost exactly like fish roe. Each sphere is filled with juice and pops when you bite it. The pearls come in colors ranging from white to pink to deep red depending on the variety. Indigenous Australians ate finger limes for thousands of years before chefs rediscovered them in the 1990s and began featuring them in high-end cuisine. They appear on oysters, in cocktails, and as a garnish in dishes where both the visual and the flavor are part of the point. The trees are slow-growing, covered in sharp spines, and difficult to cultivate at scale, which keeps prices high. Medlar. The medlar is a fruit that must rot before you can eat it, and that sentence alone explains why it has largely disappeared from modern food culture. It grows on a small tree and looks like a brown apple with an open, furrowed end. When you pick a medlar in autumn, it is inedible, hard, mouth-puckering, and completely unpleasant. To become edible, medlars must go through a process called bledding, where the fruit is left to soften and partially decompose until the flesh turns dark brown and mushy. Once bledded, the flavor is remarkable. Sweet and wine-like with notes of spiced applesauce, dates, and brown sugar. Medieval Europeans ate medlars widely because they provided sweet fruit in winter, after every other fruit had long since finished. Once refrigeration made other fruits available year-round, the medlar became unnecessary. Tomato. The tomato is technically a fruit by every botanical definition. It is more specifically a berry, but an 1893 United States Supreme Court ruling officially classified it as a vegetable for trade and tariff purposes. And that ruling has never been overturned. The tomato is native to western South America, where wild varieties still grow as small scattered berries, very unlike the large cultivated ones we eat today. When tomatoes arrived in Europe in the 16th century, most people refused to eat them. They belong to the nightshade family, and the leaves and stems of the plant are genuinely toxic. For roughly 2 centuries, Europeans grew tomatoes as decorative plants and nothing more. The Italians were among the first to commit to eating them, which is why tomatoes became so embedded in Italian cuisine, despite the fact that they only arrived there about 400 years ago. Passion fruit. Passion fruit is native to South America and takes its name not from romantic passion but from the Passion of Christ. Spanish Catholic missionaries in Brazil in the 16th century saw the flower's elaborate structure as a representation of elements of the crucifixion story and named it accordingly. The fruit itself is small with a wrinkled purple or yellow skin. Inside are seeds surrounded by a pulp that is intensely tart and floral, with an aroma that carries even when diluted heavily into juice. A small amount of passion fruit concentrate can flavor an entire drink. The flavor is so concentrated that the fruit punch is far above its size. It is used in cocktails, desserts, sauces, and juices across South America, Australia, Southeast Asia, and the Caribbean.